What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Slaughter podcast. I am joined today by my co-host, Charles. What's up, dude?
What it do, everybody? Welcome back.
I like the excitement. Yeah, we took a little break, but I am back and I'm ready to talk about some exciting things. Just knocking out the introduction here. Charles, let's just catch up with you. We haven't spoken in a few weeks. What have you been up to? Anything surrounding the game or any personal projects?
I started making a video game because I needed more hobbies, so I'm working on a little indie project. Other than that, though, painted up some D&D figures and a little bit of role playing game. Since the world's opening up a little bit more on my end, my options have opened up a little bit, and kind of this downtime with the game. So I've just been kind of doing other stuff, palate cleanser activities.
Nice. I have been pretty busy with of course, life stuff, but also I've got this backlog of battle reports now to edit, which is a good thing, of course. So that's more content for you guys to digest. A lot of the footage that I shot actually came from the Indianapolis quote unquote Adepticon tournament that happened a few weeks ago. I don't think we've had a podcast since I came back from Indy. So I'll just give a quick recap on how I did. A little disappointed with my own personal performance. I went 2-2, but all of my opponents, all four opponents that I played, were tremendous. Very fun games. Shout out to Dakota, who's been featured on the channel before. He's a Baratheon player, but he brought Starks. He was actually my second opponent in the tournament, and I have not seen worse dice rolls in my life. I mean, these were worse than TTS dice. He was 1 for 7 with Varys and for the day, and I was the second game he played. He was 1 for 7, and it spiraled out of control for him. I felt so bad, but I did win that game. I lost my first game against a fella named John Hurley, one of Brett Lanford's close friends. They spar with each other all the time. He was a really great player. It was a stark mirror match. We both had Howland. And I actually thought I was going to win that game because we were playing Game of Thrones. We both ran Walder, but I won the beginning dice roll, so I got to choose sides, and we drew the shut off NCU objective. And so I chose that one and was able to secure it and shut off his Walder. But in classic Chris fashion, I got a little bit too lax when I was winning. And I always say when good players, when their back is against the wall, that's when they start seeing plays that I don't. So I lost that game. My third game I played against, I believe his name was Steven, out of the Philly area, and he brought Free Folk. I was able to edge out that win. And then my last match of the day was against Craig, who is a contributor for the Small Council Radio podcast and another great player. Stark Mirror match. I lost that match, unfortunately, but again, I had a really great time. I also got to shoot battle report after the tournament. So not only did I shoot 2 matches, I shot my first match against John Hurley, and then I shot the final table match that was Brett Lanford and Dave from Small Council Radio. So I shot those 2, and I also shot a battle report with Dave after that using 1.7 stuff. So stay tuned for that. Next in the list of things to talk about is the giveaway winners. So I had quite a few giveaways, one of which was a giveaway that was courtesy of Dave from Small Council Radio. That was the last battle report that I did. Shout out to him. We gave away a unit of Cave Dweller Savages. The winner of that was Davos, so congratulations to him. We also wrapped up the Patron XP campaign, and I felt like that was very fun. Brent Russell came out with the win with the most kills for that campaign, so congratulations to him. And then lastly, congratulations to Murray, who won a unit box of his choice for the random giveaway that I do at the end of every quarter. So that is sort of the quick introductions that I had. So let's just go on and talk about today's topic, which is the Gamers Haven 30-point tournament that is happening next weekend. I'm pretty excited about that. I have some things planned for this podcast, one of which includes Charles, because obviously he is all the way down in Louisiana and cannot attend the event. But I had Charles build two 30-point lists with his Free Folk faction, and we'll discuss why he built those lists and how he feels they would fare in a 30-point environment. So, when I told you about this topic, Charles, what did you think overall about 30 points as a beginner tournament?
I think it's good beginner-friendly activity. 30 points as an exercise. I don't love it for free folk just because of how the faction plays. If they meet a competitive player, like just because it's a newer player focused like 30-point event, doesn't mean everyone there is going to be at the same level of newness or interpret games the same. Some people new to games pick up games very fast. And free folk can be very punishing at the lower point counts because you just don't have the bodies to soak, which is a lot of free folk's design space in 1.6 assumes you have bodies to soak. So it's a little awkward, but having played the Growth and Decay narrative campaign and stuff that Locabri put together over the Discord a few months back, and seeing how some of the other 30-point lists played out, I felt pretty comfortable that free folk can play at that level, and actually some of the starter box options are actually some of your best tools for it. So I thought it was cool because my main man Tormund was a pretty comfortable pick, I think. And then all you really need is a heroes box, and you have your second list, which is also pretty cool. So it's actually very new player friendly if they understand why the build is what it is. It's like a box of skin changers, and the heroes box gives you both lists basically if you play it the way I would play it, which is really cool. It was a fun exercise to think about, so I'd be excited as an experienced player, but I think it's really cool that I feel like my lists are like week 2 of being a free folk player, things you probably bought. If you went to the store and were like, I want to get into free folk, they're probably gonna tell you to buy a starter box, probably 2, but at least 1 heroes box and skin changes in 1.6. And I also think you're ready to rock and roll for the 30-point event.
Before we do a deep dive into the list that you chose, I just want to go over some of the rules that were created by the tournament organizers. So again, 30 points. There is also a restriction where you cannot take Walder and Varys unless you're running neutrals. And we are running 1.7 game modes. I believe the game modes are Fire and Blood, Clash of Kings, Game of Thrones, and Honed and Ready. If I were a TO, I wouldn't put restrictions for list building, but I understand why they did. We have quite a few players that are coming where this is their first tournament. I know 2 for sure have only had 1 or 2 games under their belt. I think that it's still going to be a fun event. I am excited to play an army that I'm not used to, which is Baratheons. It's kind of interesting when when you're coming into a tournament. I mean, I consider myself experienced. I've played quite a few games, but knowing that there are quite a bit of newer players, like how is that going to affect my list building? And we'll get into that once we talk about my list. But all right, Charles, let's go over your Tormund list that you built. Let's just break it down.
Yeah, so Tormund, starter box commander. We all know I have some love for Tormund. It's a good place to start, and the reason why it's a good place to start is actually his tactics cards. His tactics cards are very new player friendly, in my opinion, and they do some of the things you have problems with at 30 points. So I mentioned at 30 points, you know, free folk assume you have cheap insig units to soak wounds for things that need to soak wounds, right? To hold objectives and things like that. We assume you have body advantage, and the tactics deck does that also. So because at 30 points you don't actually have those extra 12 bodies from raiders, right? You usually have an extra 16 bodies in the 10-point difference from 30 to 40, right? So that's a lot of bodies to make up for in what is kind of the assumed value in the way free folk is played. So Tormund's Rallying Assault is legit heals and fairly consistent heals. They're pretty easy to get. You don't have a whole lot of successful charge anything in Free Folk other than Tormund. Counter charge is always good because it's still a form of manipulating action advantage, which again, Free Folk kind of have to have that to dictate the way the game is played because they don't have the raw stats otherwise. So that's always good. And then Rush of Aggression is your basic, like, baby's first combat trick, right? It's very useful. So he's got basically 3 of the things you need at low points. You need a way to increase your output because you don't have enough heavy hitters. You need some sustain or some sort of durability element because you don't have enough bodies, the usual amount of bodies. And you have a way to kind of leverage a little bit of activation control and counter charge. So he fit the bill quite easily, in my opinion, as a good place to start. So I put him in Raiders, and then the obligatory second set of Raiders with a Harma and her Bannerman, because you shouldn't leave home without Harma. Because again, she gives you a way of leveraging action advantage, which is very important. And then her order, her Bannerman is if I need to just increase my output offensively, I have the option, which is real big. And then also in Tormund's unit, I have a skin changer because you're charging a lot. And again, even though skin changers aren't activations, which is kind of the deception that new players fall under, they think of it in terms of that. It is still important because you don't have the normal volume of units to be able to body block with bears. So where normally I don't take a lot of bears, at lower point values, bears are very important because that speed bump is really important in this case. And also, you can pivot them in a way, it's a good practice for new players as well, to pivot them in such a way that once the berry is charged, that means the opponent's unit is counter-chargeable, which gives you a way of turning on Tormund's cards. And again, and trying to get that pseudo-activation advantage out of it. So where normally bears aren't a real activation, because they can trigger counter-charge, and when we look at my second list a little bit later, we can trigger Styre's Vengeance and stuff like that. You get to leverage activation advantage just like you would at 40 points, which is very, very important. Then I have 1 unit of trappers, just like in the starter box, with a unit of skin changers. In this case, either A, it's a second bear, depending on your matchup, or it's an eagle, because you need to charge. And then at 7 points, at 30 points, you have to have a way to kill units because you can't swarm like you normally would. So I have a Savage Giant, a classic giant, and Tormund. Counter-charging giants are insane. Tormund's rally card can heal giants, increasing their sustain. It makes them a real problem for other people to deal with in the middle of the board. Holding objectives, so it gives you a better objective holder. That's the other thing about counter charge as well, is that counter charge is good for the way the new game modes work, in that if you attack, you can just take the objectives, right? More chance to cost panic checks, things like that.
Yep.
And then I have a fairly traditional 3 NCU, because one of Free Folk's strengths, whether you agree or disagree with 3 NCU meta, is that we have more 3-point NCUs than other people. So 3-point activations allows you to leverage these like Harma maneuvers, these counter charges, this Lady Val maneuver, to get some spacing. 3 NCUs is really big at 30 points for Free Folk because they can afford it, where not everybody's going to be able to afford it. So that is an advantage they can lean into, right? So you've got these pseudo activations and then a cheap activation. In my base list, I had Mance, Egret originally because I wasn't sure if we were making this specifically for Bob's event. Because if you're dealing with Walder, because Walder's in every list, Egret has to be there for the giant. And then Lady Val. Now, knowing that there's probably not going to be a ton of neutrals at 30 points because they don't do very well at 30 points. Honestly, actually they're not the worst. They did pretty well in the Growth in the K League. It was at 30 points, though 35 points, they started to fall off, right? But you can drop Egret and drop the Skin Changer unit that's probably in the Free Folk Trappers. And you can add,
I know you're going with this.
And you can add Styre.
Yep.
If you feel you need it. Okay. That's a flavor choice. There are plenty of other attachments, like influences in the game, that you probably also don't want to deal with. But you also don't want to have to turn off a ton of your own attachments, right? Because you have a Harmer, you don't want to turn Harmer off. You have a Torment, you don't want to turn Torment off. But you might want to use it for Courtney Penrose. You might want to use it for Howlands. So you can either run it exactly like my first draft, or you can get Styre in there if you want to, right? You can. Just it's up to the player. Not a big deal. I think the list is better with Styre, but I don't blame anyone for keeping Egret. Like, Egret's not bad in this rig for that reason, right? And then my second list is pretty much the same thing, so I don't have to go over the whole thing. You swap Tormund for Styre, and that's basically it. You swap Egret for Craster. The other thing is you could just keep it like it is here, and if you don't need Egret because you don't know about what's Walder, you can actually run Craster. And I probably would just do that. I would probably, knowing the Walder limitation, I'd probably run Mance, Craster, Lady Val, and this Torment list, and then swap Torment out for Styre. If you're playing in another event in the future at 30 points that allows mammoths, or you're a UK listener and you're running mammoths because you have them, they're illegal there. Basically, you drop the giant, you add the mammoth, and then I added the skin changer to Harmer's unit instead of the trappers, and I added a chosen of Styre to add weakened to really kind of bubble wrap my units and stuff. And now that 30-point Styre list is a tanky list because you're getting all those activations for the mammoth. You have Craster instead of Egret to heal units. Styre has a reactivation card. Styre gives a morale bubble or a morale boost to the unit he's in, so they're pretty good on a node. And then you're putting out weakened tokens with the chosen of Styre. So basically, that's 30 points of free folk in my opinion, and I'd play it, obviously.
So let's talk about what you think free folk or your list in particular would excel at this tournament, and maybe what your biggest weaknesses are, or maybe some of the factions that you'd be most worried about going into.
Free folk at this level, free folk at most levels, struggle against gunline and good cavalists. Cheap archers are going to be pretty reliable for people to plug in as like their budget super unit. Build a crossbowman, Lannister crossbowman, things like that at like 6 and 7 points is honestly even Stormcrow archers, right? Can just wreck free folk. That's why the giant's very important, actually, to hold more forward nodes when you need to. That's part of why I said Torment and his heal is relevant. And having the skin changers is more relevant at 30 points than it is at 40. For people who know me, I don't run bears a lot at 40 points. But having the speed bump to kind of limit the cavalry charge, because most people will only have one cavalry unit, but they will rely on it because at 30 points, like Knights of Castle Rock are a real problem for pretty much everyone. They're going to run amok. So you need to be able to body block them with a bear and then threaten them with the counter charge from a giant or something, right? So really playing your bear for clogging lanes and stuff is going to be important. At the same time, the same tools that you're talking about using to manage your bad matchups are also why you're going to have a lot of advantages on anything with objective nodes. So if you get Game of Thrones, if you get Honed and Ready, if you get any of those types of things, Here We Stand, those types of like stand in a quadrant, stand on a multiple nodes thing. It's not gonna be the best for like Dance with Dragons, nor it's actually not that bad for like Fire and Blood or Clash of Kings. But yeah, you're gonna do the best with like secret objectives. It's pretty good in secret objective modes, like Winter is Coming and stuff. Anything with objective counters, like multiple objective points on the board, you're going to do better than everybody but Starks, because Starks will still be bringing dogs, and dogs can still hold objectives. Well, you can hold objectives with bears. You can certainly hold objectives with giants. So those are your advantages, really. But yeah, you're trying to use your terrain cleverly to not get shot off the table, and then you're trying to use your bears to not get bodied by getting Pac-Manned by Knights of Castle Rock or Telecav. So those are like your bad matchups, gun lines and Cav, and then even 30 points. Like a 30 points, Targaryens are a terror actually. In some cases, they can be. So like you kind of want to duck some of those matchups, but it's looking on terrain mostly.
I mean, looking at your Torment list, I'd be very worried if I were matched up against you, just because a few things. We went over the strength of 3 NCUs. Just at 30 points, it's so hard to squeeze in that third NCU unless you're running an NCU commander. The good thing is we are running the 1.7 game mode, so it's less enticing to bring an NCU commander, but I'm sure it'll still happen. So I personally am not bringing NCU commander in either list. I also think that the activations that you'll get when you're able to play this horde, that's always a threat if there's no prevalence of Eris. And if you replace Ygritte with Styr in that Torment list, it's pushing in those extra wounds, forcing panic checks. I'd be pretty worried for myself if I were to go up against it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why you consider the putting Styr in the Torment list mainly, right? That's like I'm going to poke and prod and chip out Baratheon's matchups. There is a kind of a Telly wall in some way. They're running a lot of Telly Sorin shields or something really durable. You throw that in there, right? You can work with some of that. The two lists play differently, right?
Yep.
It's definitely an option. And again, because you're trying to leverage and that's why I like the Craster and like the Styr list, right? If it's like your goal is to outlast them by scoring the commander points because they brought an NCU commander and you want the on-field commander, then you really consider the Styr list with Craster because he can that morale 6 Styr unit, right? Raiders that can punish you back, things like that, is going to get a lot of work. And if you're healing with Craster and getting your card draw and getting the Styr's cards and stuff like that, so. And then you really threaten them aggressively with that giant though, because it's not a mammoth. So you really, really need to make sure your positioning game in both lists, where you put the giant is super important, basically.
Oh god, the giant. Also, going back to the fact that Walder is probably not going to be prevalent either, so that giant is just going to run rampant. Yeah, pretty scary. So let's go ahead and move on to what I am bringing. I'm 99% sure this is what I'm going to bring. We've got Stovetop in chat right now. We actually got to practice on last Sunday. I played my Stannis list. Stannis right now is in a unit of Stag Knights. I've also got a Dragonstone Noble, Baratheon Wardens, Stormcrow Archers with a Red Priestess, and then I'm running Shira and Selyse and Shireen. So yeah, I know I'm running Stag Knights, but I'll just back up a little bit. I wanted to play Baratheons because I needed an excuse to paint them. I'm actually very excited to play them in 1.7. So, this was my excuse to paint the units that I'm really excited to field. So Stag Knights was one of those units. I also painted up my Rose Knights, which I'm pretty proud of. Stag Knights in a 30-point tournament, if I were trying to be competitive, I wouldn't have done this. I think the best place for Stannis the Rightful Heir is in a unit of Bastards Girls. Everyone knows that. Tactical approach with Bastards Girls is just nasty. It's completely nasty. I also was debating on whether or not I wanted to take out Selyse and Shireen for maybe Tycho. I actually think that would be very smart, but I painted them, I should say. So that's the inclusion of an NCU that's going to self-inflict wounds, and I have no real way to heal unless I take bags. So a bit worrisome. I think this list would excel at Fire and Blood and Clash of Kings. I think those are the 2 game modes that I would bring this list for sure. Charles, is there anything you think you would change or do differently?
As not a Baratheon specialist, I would say not super. I mean, you're eating points on Stag Knights, and that's the thing, and that's okay. Do what makes you happy. Red Priestess and the Archers is interesting. As opposed to some other, like a Stormcrow Lieutenant or something.
I originally had a Stormcrow Lieutenant in the Archers, but I thought about it, and I think another way to give your opponent tokens is the game plan. I know that their morale is atrocious at an 8, but you also get that reroll. So I'm back and forth on it. That's one thing that I think I'll make a last minute decision on, whether or not I will replace the Red Priestess with the Stormcrow Archer.
Let me check something real quick before I misspeak here. Yeah, yeah. I would be honestly what I would be looking to figure out if I had a way of doing it, and I mean you do, is Axel Florent. I'd have a hard time leaving home without him. As a way of getting rid of wolves and little chump things that just need to be out of your way because you don't have a whole lot of threat extension. Right. Axel is a champ, in my opinion, in a lot of key matchups, especially at lower point values where your toolbox is limited. He opens that toolbox up a good bit. But I don't dislike the Station Serene, though, as far as you were like kind of deciding if you should have taken it or not. I think they're fine. I think part of what Stannis wants to do is try and blow you off the table. So I mean, that is what it is. Because, like, honestly, he should be in. We're going for competitiveness, right? It's like he should be in Bastard Girls, and things like that. But I think you're fine overall.
One thing is about Selyse and Shireen. I did think about putting in Axel. The only reason why I would is not for his ability. He's super annoying for Starks, I know, but it would be for the point reduction. I decided to add in Selyse and Shireen because one thing I considered when building these two lists is if I end up playing against an opponent that is not an experienced player, I didn't want to bring things to the table that would be completely NPE. So if a newer player wanted to bring Starks, I don't want to kill off a wolf, right off the bat. I want my opponent to be able to play with the things that they bring to the table and learn things from it. Selyse and Shireen is, I think, a good option because it's a strong NCU, but you understand that it's a balanced design. I'm taking wounds as well. That's the reason why I didn't take Axel. Although I totally would if there were more experienced players at this tournament.
Yeah. So if you are a intro-ish player or a mid-tier player trying to like go win your first like Young Bloods tournament with this list, and I was trying to give them advice, not so much you advice. My answer would be turn Stag Knights into Bastard Girls. That shaves you a point. Turn Archers and Red Priestess just into Wardens. That gives you 2 points. And then I'd pick up Axel. And I'd run 3 NCUs with the same amount of units. And Stannis is in a better unit. If you're listening and you're like, I have a lot of things, but I'm fairly new, or this is my first real tournament and I want to do well, that's a try-hard version of this list. But this list is fine. This list is fair. This list, in the hands of a very good player who just doesn't make a mistake, particularly, will win games. It's a fine list. And for those of you who may be, cringing at us saying, NPE and whatever, we're in a pretty big lull between 1.6 and 2021. We are 100% in the world is reopening, rebuilding communities, and making your own fun. So Bob put together a new player-friendly build your community, have beer and pretzels tournament at 30 points, and I think it's dope. So if you're a big tournament chaser, these events aren't always for you, but you should consider them if you're having a hard time motivating players in your player base. Sounds like a lot of good new people are showing up for this tournament, and I'm super excited for you guys and jealous at the same time. And if you're a more experienced player, we know you, and you're coming to this event, and you're like, oh man, Chris is gonna, he's that's a good point Chris made. You can have a try hard list whenever you pair up against Chris, or Dave or somebody, and your all rounder list can be a bit softer on the edges for your generals list. And then you can have when I see an experienced player noob crushing with Starks, I have to have an answer list. Then that's your list. So you can do both. There's a middle ground there. And I think you bring up a very good point about, it is something you should consider right now. Know your audience and know the intention of your event. And shout out to the stats guys. Like Carlo talks about it, right? And we had some people talk about it for the Slaughterhouse event. It wasn't their cup of tea because they like try hard tournaments. They like trying to play to be the best. Otherwise, why play? And that's legit. Knowing when it's not for you is totally a thing. But knowing your audience and who you're going to play against and having a good time sounds dope. And I'm pretty excited. I think that list is fine. But like I said, if I was making a try hard list of it, that's what I would do. So if you're You're trying to crush your first win, boys. That's how I would change that list.
Just to reiterate, winning is great. Everyone likes to win, but for me, it's more important that the players that are new walk away with a good experience and they felt like they learned something from it.
Yeah, and like your list is spicy enough. Like it's gonna have plenty of coachable moments. Like if they don't deny you the bags and Salation Shahreed runs rampant for free, just like Melisandre could run rampant for free, then you need to teach them that like while bags doesn't seem like a super important zone because swords is super important and horses is super important, or you're playing Lannisters and you think crowns is super important, no. In this matchup,
Right.
denying bags is super important. So even though the list is not optimal, it will create coachable moments for new players, and I think that is a very important takeaway for you. And I agree with you 100% on that point.
Yeah, and you brought up bringing one list that is, sort of list where your opponent can learn from it, and then bringing a complete gas fire list. I didn't do that, but I know that a few of our experienced players will be doing that. I actually played against Tim, who's been on the podcast before. He's a Lannister player, and he asked me right before we did our practice match, what I would want to play against, and I was like, dude, bring your gas list. And he had a double Knights of Casterly Rock list, and it made me rethink what I was doing with my lists. If there are going to be multiple players that are going to be doing that. But going back to the fact that I painted these Stag Knights and I'm going to play them, goddammit. So I actually think they're not too bad. I said that I think they're going to thrive in modes like Fire and Blood and Clash of Kings. The fact that Stannis gives the Stag Knights crit blow just right off the bat, and then in Clash, if I'm able to get, let's say, Sundering or Vicious on them, that's 2 keywords. And then if they lose a rank, I can get pretty much 3. That was my first list. We'll move on to my second list. I am running Renly. I'm not a Renly fan in particular, but I do think that the Rose Knights are one of the coolest models in the game. So I decided to put Renly in a unit of Rose Knights. I've got Stormcrow Archers with a Stormcrow Lieutenant. I've got Sentinels with Brienne, Wardens, and then my NCUs are Eldon and Shira. I think if you're running Renly's side, there's no reason why you wouldn't bring Eldon. I think he is one of the best NCUs in the game. The idea here is bring this list for game modes where I just need to hold the objective and keep it. Rose Knights are pretty easy to use and pretty easy to understand. So for newer players that haven't played against them before, I would probably guide them into ignoring this unit unless they want to slowly get grinded down, taking wounds every time they attack. And then there was a suggestion from someone that said maybe putting Brienne in the unit of Stormcrow Archers because she the ability that whenever Renly is attacked, I can make a free attack on the unit that attacked him. And I felt like I didn't want to waste the ability of the Stormcrow Archers to have a free attachment. There's a little more setup that would need to happen for her to get value in Sentinels, but I think they can still be a scary unit. And then Shira is only in there to fill out the 3 points. So what do you think about this list, Charles? Is there anything that sticks out to you that I should change or maybe look into?
Not super. Again, the list answers some of the questions I mentioned at 30 points, right? You don't have a lot of activations, so they need to stick and need to be meaningful. So Renly brings sustain, right, to a faction that, as durable as Baratheons look on paper, they don't actually have a ton of sustain, right? They attrit as they die in a lot of cases, outside of like Courtney lists, right? So he brings a lot of heals and things that's really important. Brienne brings us another form of action advantage. If you can't get actual activation advantage, getting actions is just as good in some cases. At 30 points, it's just as impactful. I agree that Sentinels is not always the best unit for her because of the setup it takes to really make them shine. If I was to try and change this list, let me look and see what another unit costs real quick. Let me check the point value of something. I don't have all the point values in my head right now. Yeah. All right. I was right. Okay. Cool. So I would personally drop the Stormcrow Lieutenant and the archers. Well, it's a free. Never mind. It's free. So you can't gain a point that way. Never mind. I was if you can gain a point that way, you could upgrade Sentinels to Dervishes, and that's a strictly better unit for Brienne to be in. But you can't because that's free. So nope, it's probably as good as it's gonna be, really. Like it's as good as it's gonna be. The free Stormcrow Lieutenant's free, and that's about as good as it's gonna get. I think it's a fine list because it's like you said, it's tank and spank, right? Like again, coachable moments. It's gonna teach players to keep track of countercharge and out of activation actions, which is a real big part of the game, even in 2021. And it's going to teach them that some units, the best way is to just ignore the dang thing in Rose Knights, but it is going to park on objectives and stare you down and dare you to initiate in something way meaningful. So I mean, this is a very solid list. It's going to be hard for a lot of factions to answer unless they built a real heavy hitter that's just going to hit those Rose Knights for a truck, or they have some way to really get activation advantage on you. So I think it's a real solid list, honestly.
Stannis is the better commander, but I think this list is stronger. And the sole fact that Stannis is in Stag Knights. I think I'm going to look forward to playing Stannis more. Although I'll be taking Renly again for like the objective base game modes. One opponent that I'm hoping that I don't run into, played him before, he's been featured on the channel, is Max. Max is actually competing in this tournament, which I'm very excited about because he's always been the TO.
The Iron Churro himself?
Yes. Yeah, the Iron Churro. I know for sure he's bringing Baratheons. That's his bread and butter. I know for sure he's bringing Stannis. And if he brings Stannis, I'm gonna have to guess maybe the other list is gonna feature Mel. And I think if I do end up playing him, this Renly list is the list I would have to bring just from the healing options that Renly has in his deck. The only issue is I would try to fit in Tycho somehow, just for that extra assurance. If I can save a unit from being completely bombed off the table. If I had another unit of Wardens, I would take out the Sentinels and add the Wardens in there, and then upgrade Shira to Tycho. But I don't, and I'm sure as hell not bringing in an unpainted army to this tournament. So
I don't even think you need it at that point, though. I think this list, if his dice don't particularly spike, he's going to have a hard time dealing with the volume of armor and average morale you really have, plus heals from Charismatic Air's cards. This is not necessarily the type of list a Stannis list wants to see, because he's not likely, like, for instance, if he brings his tactical nuke, right, his Stannis and Bastard Girls with cards, right, to blow you up, it's actually gonna be really hard to do that, statistically. So like, it's not the best for that matchup, honestly. Yeah, I agree with you. Shaving a point here or there, for Sentinels to turn to Wardens into something else. Maybe another attachment somewhere, something else to spice things up to give you some advantage. But I don't think you need it, and I also don't think this list is terrible into a Stannis list, to be honest. I think it's an okay matchup if you see them.
the only thing that worries me about this list against Stannis and Bastard Girls opponent is it's slow. And I think my only way to keep up with being peppered with shots is my own ranged unit. So that's why I included the Stormcrow archers in there, is just to sort of hit back. Our players will use terrain. They'll use their own units to body block and just make things difficult for me to use Brienne's ability to use countercharge. I'm hoping that I don't play Max in that type of list, but maybe I won't. Guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Like I said, I don't think that, because it's also kind of the game mode, right? Because the new game modes are closer together. You being slow is not that problematic, right? If you get like a Dance with Dragons, like everybody's slow, right?
Yeah,
And it goes your
oh,
way.
true. Yep.
So you can get to nodes faster now. You're one march away with a four speed unit, so it's not that bad. You may want to play test to just see how you like it. Brienne in the archers gets the free shot in the melee. It's not a big deal because Rose Knights and Renly don't super care. and the Rose Knights pass a morale test, so they can do a wound and heal a wound and whatever. So like you got a little bit of a manipulation there. If you want to, if you're looking for like some tech, you lose the free point, but you have an easier time triggering Brienne's ability because it's a range attack, right?
Yeah.
So you're just kind of machine gunning with the archers. They're not the best archers, but like you're taking shots. At 30 points, you don't got a whole lot to chew through, so it's okay. So it's worth considering just swapping that out. You don't net the point, but you still put an attachment in a meaningful unit. So both options are fine, but it takes a little bit less setup to get Brienne in there.
Since we breezed through our two list choices, I was hoping to discuss Stovetop's lists that he just posted in chat here. Stefan, can you hop in?
What's up, guys?
Yo, what's good, man?
Not much.
So you posted your two lists that you're thinking about bringing to this tournament. Do you mind just going over this first one here? This Ramsey list that I actually faced last Sunday.
Yeah. I took Ramsey and Night's Watch in the Sworn Brothers. I took a Watch Marshal with the Scorpion and the Scorpion crew with conscripts and Othel, and the Othel modification with Craster and Peter.
I remember thinking it was pretty nasty. I mean, what I like about the list is, number one, you're running Peter, which is a smart choice. I typically don't run neutral NCUs in a Night's Watch list, but at 30 points, you're giving yourself the option to take a zone that you may need it to and block your opponent. It's also smart because you are running the Scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any reason why you are not running Lethal Commander?
The NCU commander thing, I don't like running things that aren't going to be in 1.7. Like I know NCU commanders are gone, so why play them? Honestly,
yeah.
I had a list that had a Roos commander, and I had a list that had an Othel commander, and I kept going back and forth, and then I was just like, well, it doesn't make sense to, especially in a newbie tournament, to play the NCU commander. It's not going to be there in 1.7.
I mean, Othel is giving you those out of turn actions. So
yep.
With the War Machine Specialist, I believe that. Wait, no, he grants you rerolls. It's the Scorpion modification that allows you to have separate charge, which is huge. You can also use the horse to shoot with the Scorpion crew. Pretty freaking nasty. During our game, I knew that your Scorpion was the biggest threat, and I had to charge them. You had positioned them in a way where I could only charge the front. Luckily, I charged with my Dragonstone Noble, and I survived with one wound, which actually buffed him.
2 rounds of shooting.
Yeah, I got really lucky, and it was a risk I had to take because with that Scorpion on the field, there was no way I was winning that game.
Yeah.
Also, another huge threat that I always failed to forget, even though I'm a neutral player, is Cruel Methods. Cruel Methods with a Scorpion is hugely powerful because the Scorpion obviously doesn't have to take a morale test. So if you don't kill the unit, you don't have to have that drawback. And with the rerolls, you're likely taking out at least half a unit. Charles, what do you think about this list?
I think it's solid enough. I've played into a couple of versions of this type of list before, and it's always a little rough. Scorpion, if you're not trying to play around it, is rough. I like the Builder mod better, but I don't know if I like Senior Builder in this list over Awful. So I think you're fine with it. I think it's a flavor choice if you put a Builder instead of Awful and then put a Builder mod instead. Only reason why I like the Builder mod more is it's easier to trigger the free shot. They just got to end their movement within long range, which is going to happen. So you just shoot dudes more regularly. So, the reroll is not as important because you're just shooting more. That's a flavor choice at that point. I think it's fine.
Think about that, Stefan?
The only thing I think about is my dice rolls.
Hey, that's fair. Hey,
How bad
is what
my
it
dice
is.
rolls are.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's fair. It's a flavor choice. I don't think either is a wrong answer. Honestly, I think rapid reload on Othel's mod is really relevant as well. Right, he gives a reroll. His mod gives an extra attack as well. And like I said, rapid reload is really relevant. So it's real strong. I think it's fine.
Another strength of the list is utilizing the watch marshal. Getting to maneuver your Scorpion into shooting range is pretty scary as well. The only issue is, the watch marshal, as it stands in 1.6, only has 2 wounds, susceptible to traps. It's also Axel. Axel is a watch marshal killer. It's a risk taking it, but you also, we'll get into your next list. You have another list here that is a little more resilient to particular types of opponents. So we'll get into why you built this next list. So let's talk about your Gior list.
So I took Gior Commander. I put him in Knights and Sworn Brothers, mainly because I wanted to run them ahead, and if I had to shoot the Scorpion into them, I wasn't worried about losing too many, hopefully, with my panic rolls. But it's basically the same list. Conscripts with Othel, and then a Watchmaster, Faster, and Peter. So that's the only difference.
Now, did you build this list before or after you played Max in a practice
After.
So let's get a little background on why you chose Gior for this list.
So a couple weeks ago, I played Max, and he was like, "Oh, I want to test this list out, this 30-point list out." I was like, "Oh, great! I got one too. I want to test out." And I brought John with John Commander and a dog, who was going to be my other on-field commander with Ramsey. But I wanted to take crossbows, so I brought crossbows instead. Almost the exact same list. And I gave him first turn, and he basically axled the dog right off the table first turn. And then considered to Mel bomb my crossbows 2 turns in a row and just wiped them off the table before I can even move them up into position. It was laughable. But I don't think I made one panic roll that entire. Oh, I made one at the end. Made one panic roll at the end. But there was hard panic rolls too. I mean, they were 10s, 11s.
Oh yeah,
across the board against him. So I sat down and I was like, well, fuck, if I run into that again, I'm gonna have to have an answer because I know he's gonna bring it. He's gonna play it. I was like, well, hell, the only thing I have is Gior. So put Gior in the Sworn Brothers, basically run him down his throat and shoot the Scorpion in after him. And hopefully wipe him out before Mel wipes out the rest of the army.
I mean, Gior is hard tech against Mel, in my opinion. He has a really great card. I forget what it's called, but essentially it's when you make a morale test, you get to roll an extra die and choose the highest.
Yes, I'm pulling them out right now. Hold on. Yeah, it's duty to the watch.
Yeah,
you roll an extra dice and discard the lowest.
That's a great card. He also gives the Sworn Brothers +2 morale, which is also great.
Yep.
Also, it gives him the harder decision. Well, it makes his decision easier, actually, on who to Mel bomb at that point. You can't Mel bomb the Scorpion crew. Watch Marshal, I guess, is a risk, but conscripts, I think, why not? They're not worth a point, which is great. But at least it's forcing him to go for a chaff unit and not something important like your Sworn Brothers. Gior also has a card that is able to search your deck, which is also great to get duty to the watch. So I really like this choice. watch you not have to play Max.
Hey, either way, I know I know my panic dice are horrible, so eventually Gior is gonna see the field. Plus, I just painted him, so he's gonna see the field one way or another. I'm gonna play him.
Yeah, like it's not bad into panic lists in general, right? It's really just not bad for it. And if they're bombing conscripts, they have an auto heal, right, and things like that. Like that's not the unit you want to be bombing anyway.
Yeah.
So you're really just kind of nerfing some points there. I think that's fine.
What are the considerations for game modes? Harder to make this decision now because your opponent and what list they bring also affects your decision. But
Yeah.
what are your strengths and weaknesses here with each list?
I would think that the Othel is more of the sit on objectives list is more of the way I'm thinking of it. Is the sit if I got to sit on something with the Sworn Brothers, I can. I'm not worried about getting panic and dropping tokens.
Oh, you mean Gior? Your Gior list?
Gior. I'm sorry, Gior.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about dropping those tokens. Whereas Ramsey, he's going to probably be balls to the walls, run down someone's throat if he can.
Yeah, so like Fire and Blood, Clash of Kings.
Yep, exactly. Especially Clash of Kings, that'll be great to put extra precision on Sworn Brothers is gorgeous.
Oh yeah. You were able to do that. Was it you?
Yeah.
You had precision with the Swarm Brothers? God.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's going away in 1.7.
Yeah,
If
I
units
almost wiped out Stannis.
Almost. Yeah, you almost did. It's the Stag Knights are OP.
Yep.
Well, Stefan, thank you for hopping in here. I really look forward to seeing how these lists do in the tournament. Good luck. I'll see you Sunday, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right. So, bringing our topic to a close, is there any advice that you would give to newer players that are showing up to this event?
Yeah, I would go through and I would read the game modes before I showed up and start asking questions in Discords or Facebook groups. That's what's going to trip players up the most. And that's what's going to feel the worst. If they don't think scoring happens in a certain way or a card they have affects something in a certain way and they're too nervous to ask and they find out that they lost because they just didn't ask, is going to leave the most regret for a player, I think. And I'm a big fan of just eliminating the taboo of asking for help, right? Like communication is key in communities. Yeah, I would just look ahead, look at the game modes. Just make sure you understand what your goal is when trying to play that game mode in reference to your list. So if your goal is to do something like, rush forth and get an objective and dance with dragons with a unit, but you don't understand the speed stipulation and you're trying to figure out which unit or card you can use, like, oh, I got a card that gives me a free march, I got forced march. Doesn't work, right? If you're unsure if it works, ask now. Don't make the play and then expect to be able to use forced march and realize you can't. But at the same time, oh, well, can I retreat? Yeah, the d6 plus the 2 move, you can retreat. Like, it's a way to cheat extra movements out of it. Like, so if you're playing Starks and you have a free retreat card, or you're playing Dervishes and you can retreat, it matters. So look at your lists, look at the types of interactions you think you're going to try and force to win the game based on how you read the game modes, and then ask to make sure that those assumptions are correct. The earlier you can get that out of the way, the better off you can be, because it also gives you time to change your list. If you realize you need to make a list for a specific game mode because you realize that half your gimmick, because you're playing Davos, doesn't work, right? The free movement tricks doesn't work. So you go, oh man, well then this is bad for this game mode. My other one's also bad for this game mode. Crap. You have time. You have time to adjust. So that's my biggest advice. Just kind of look ahead and make sure you understand the tournament side, which is the specifics of game modes and list interactions. That's the actual tournament side of things. The rest is just playing the game. That's the part you got to make sure you understand ahead of time, because you can't adjust that really from game to game. It only matters in the one game.
I definitely want to mirror what you said there. Oh, and Stefan says have fun. Of course, that's the number one rule for events like this. One thing that I would actually encourage more experienced players is to print out a copy of your lists for your opponent. I know from experience that at my first tournament, I was too busy trying to think about my own abilities and triggers and cards that I didn't think too much on what my opponent's units did and how that would affect my decisions. So I think it would be very helpful for newer players to have some like a reference sheet. Playing games is the best way to get better, and I hope that that'll be the case on Sunday. Closing out the show today, I just want to give an update on the battle report schedule. So I hope to release a battle report this Sunday. It is our first 1.7 match that we're going to feature on the channel, so I'm very excited about that. It is Lord Commander Bob and I. I brought neutrals, he brought Targaryens. The reason why it took a little long for me to release this next battle report is since we are doing 1.7, that requires me collecting all the assets to feature in the video. So that took a little time, but I'm ready. I'm working on it this week, so stay tuned for that. The next episode also marks the next XP campaign. So we're doing part 2. Those patrons that are at the 2nd and 3rd tier will be featured in this next campaign. And then finally, our shout outs. So Charles, let's start out with you. Who are we shouting out this week?
Yo, shout out to Bartender who keeps updating TTS, and he gets the assets together in like 4 hours. So I'm not quite sure what took you so long, but that man is. I know he's got a bunch of community people who work with him, but it doesn't make up for the fact that he is tirelessly grinding out, keeping this thing updated for us. And then the other thing is a shout out to all you Midwesterners and Northerners. Brett put together Adepticon. Bob's got this beginner friendly event. You guys are are doing the first out of the COVID situation to start building the community back up directly. And that's a big shout to you guys. A lot of us are still waiting for our state to catch up or product to hit our stores and things like that. But for those of you who are in the area, maybe on the fence, I think the event's this weekend, so you might not hear the podcast in time. But he got organized play support. He's got product coming in. It's pretty sweet stuff. I gander at some of what came in. People are doing a lot in your area to get stuff going, and I think that's awesome. And like Max, who doesn't play many tournaments, is playing. Veterans are showing up to add to the numbers and encourage people to show out. And then also shout out to the guys for the GT in Europe. It's in September because they're trying to judge when their bubble is gonna burst. When they can finally come out of the COVID situation, and they've already got 40 plus people pre-signed up. So
that's great.
Shouts to organizers putting in that work early, proactively versus reactively. You guys are champions of the community right now. You're doing what you can, what you got, and I appreciate everybody.
My big shout out is going to go to the guys at Stats because they actually started uploading their own battle reports, which are really great if you are into the competitive scene. Carlo has recorded matches on TTS, and he does a thorough breakdown of the lists that were brought, how he's going to approach the match, and then a play-by-play commentary. So if you haven't checked out his battle reports on the A Song of Ice and Fire Stats YouTube channel, go ahead and give it a try. I think there is plenty of stuff to learn from. He's a really great player. I will admit I played him 3 or 4 times and I still haven't won yet. So if that's a testament to how good he is as a player, then I think you guys would get a lot from that. So shout out to him. And as always, thank you guys who are patrons. And I think with that, we are out.